Hi everyone, Commander Cockins here, and our fearless leader, Captain Foley, back in for another mission briefing. And yes, Stuart wrote that part of the script, and I refuse to read the bit which says how handsome he is.
Hey, I never put a part in where I said I was handsome. Now you cut that out. Make me sound narcissistic.
So this is a very special episode of Mission Briefing. We have a guest joining us. Stuart, would you care to introduce him?
Certainly. Today we have with us Mr. Steve Neill, everyone. Welcome back to the show, Steve.
Well, I'm glad to be back. Thanks for having me.
No problem. Today's mission briefing will be all about the 66-inch TOS Enterprise project, which you're working on. Both the original one you did for yourself, which we see in the background there, and of course, the current build for the Museum of Science Fiction in Washington, D.C. So first, tell us a little about the project and what inspired you to start building something so ambitious way back in 2011.
Well, what started it all, of course, was watching Star Trek back in the 60s when I was in high school.
Mm-hmm.
And, of course, AMT came out with this great model of the Enterprise, and I went and I bought it and I brought it home. The first thing I did was go, so little. And the second thing I did is, this doesn't look right. The saucer's not, I picked it apart, you know, and wasn't happy with it at all. And always said to myself, one day, I'm going to get a really big model, an accurate model of this ship, or make it myself. And then, you know, I came to Hollywood and worked in the business and stuff. But, you know, back in 2011, I knew that my friend Jim Keyes had, with custom replicas, produced a 66-inch long Enterprise. I wanted one of those kits and build it because there was my chance, and he didn't make them anymore. And I didn't know Jim then. So I said, well, you know, darn it. I was talking to Doug Drexler, and I said, Doug, I think I'm going to build one myself. He said, you should. I said, really? He said, yeah, you should do that, and I'll help you. I'll give you all the information you need, and Mike Kuda and Gary Kerr and everybody will chip in and help you do this, but you have to do it. So I said, okay, challenge accepted, and so I started on it. I wanted to have the model, but I also kind of wanted to be part of the history by going through what they went through to build the model, and that's part of the fun part of it is the experience of building. Once you have the model, it's great. Look at this, I got this big old Enterprise back here. But the really cool part is kind of doing what they did and feeling what they felt and building this beautiful thing. So
cool.
Which is what is on screen right now, and that is a beautiful shot of the Connie. I mean, it looks as good as it done the show, which says something about the craftsmanship.
It's close. I mean, technically speaking, all the outlines, all the shapes, everything, they're all technically accurate. The paint job is more the way it was first painted before they went in and started putting in a lot more weathering and detailing.
So let's move on to the first picture here. We see it on your workbench, almost completely assembled. We got the nacelles on, but no end caps here. So tell us a little about that.
Well, it's funny because there's no real sense of scale until you realize that's a car next to it.
And what you're looking at are all the actual forms that I made, some out of foam and covered with fiberglass, some of them out of wood covered with fiberglass, the saucer section, everything's sort of propped together to get a look at it before I took all those individual forms and made molds off of them, from which I then made the actual parts.
Mm-hmm. So as in the modeling community, this is called a dry fit. Put everything together to see how it fits together before you actually assemble.
Before I actually make the molds to make the parts to then assemble it, yes.
Exactly. The next picture is just a shot of your secondary hull mold and the saucer.
Yes, that was after, of course, they were made. I think the other two rectangular, smaller ones are for the actual pylons to support the masons.
Yeah. Cool. And what are these made out of? What's the process of actually molding it then?
Okay, well, they're silicone, RTV silicone, room temperature vulcanizing material silicone. And the mother molds are actually made out of a very hard tool stone and burlap, which is called UltraCal 30.
Cool. So basically you build a box around the piece, right? And then you pour the silicone in, or how does...
I brush it up and keep brushing it up for about a half hour until it gels, and then I build the stone material on top of that to support and hold its shape.
The next picture is, I guess, all the detailing pieces, like the I see the bridge module, I see the...
These are the nacelle molds here. The base of the deflector, well, there's several parts of the deflector. You can see them all there. That little square one is the actual deflector itself. And you can see over to one side, there's silicone from Berman's Industries and the accelerant for it. So, boy, these were the days, that cramped little garage.
So the next picture, we've got the, I guess the internal structure of the saucer section there. How did you go about getting the right contours for that and scale them up to that size?
Well, this is how it all began. Doug Drexler, with permission of Gary Kerr, sent me Gary Kerr's plans. And I was not to share them with anybody or show them to anybody. I was the only person, and it's still that way to this day. He only allows certain people to have access to them.
Yeah.
So they were highly accurate because they were taken off the Smithsonian model. And included, in that were some cross sections. So what I did is I scaled up the cross sections and I cut them out of a what's called a dapperin foam, or there's a kind of foam that hamburgers come on and this kind of thing. And it's used a great deal now for making lightweight radio-controlled model airplanes and other hobby crafts. Originally, if you bought foam board, you can get that at the dollar store and other places. It's got paper on the outside of it, and it's got foam on the inside. It's the same thing. Before they made this available, we used to buy that stuff and steam the paper off to get this material. But that's all it is. It's just foam. And so what I did is make a center hub. And this was a really crazy way of doing it. I would do it differently today. But a lot of this came as a result of my scratch building model aircraft and model boats and model submarines. So I would think in terms of creating the bulkheads, connecting the bulkheads, sheeting the bulkheads, which is much how our real ships are made today in very large things, because things are so large we can't make molds for an aircraft carrier or a battleship or a submarine. So, and I remember on the forums, people were very skeptical because modelers aren't used to working this way, that I would ever make this actually happen or work.
Plays into the next photo though, with the outer saucer starting to come in, and it is great though to see. It makes so much sense to have this internal structural structure. I mean, you can't have a solid model because that would be ludicrous. It'd be too heavy. So this is a really interesting way of perceiving it. It's as a not model maker, it's really interesting.
It's fun to look at. Now the thing about it is the way the original was done is they made a contoured template of this shape, top and bottom, and they got a big turntable. They put plaster on it. They turned it with the template and basically spun it that way, and then they used that template and vacuum formed over it. I mean, that hull is just vacuum formed all these years. That's what it is.
Oh, wow.
In this case here, I needed to have a very accurate shape that I could then fiberglass and make a mold on.
How long did it take to do the saucers, this whole saucer process?
A couple of days, maybe 3.
Oh,
I
wow.
work at a pretty fast speed, because, that's all I do. And every day I'd get up, especially during this period. And I devote all my time to this. So every day I'd get up and put a good 10 hours in or more for 7 days. So, if I worked 3 days, I would get this far.
Which takes us into the next photo, which you've now put stuff on the inside. Blue.
This is the bottom of the hull. You can see how dramatically differently shaped it is from the top. Again, it's all very, very Canon, very accurate, the shape. And it's wonderful that you can take just foam and generate something like this.
Very ambitious project. I'd love to try it someday. And of course, the next picture we have, again, just more completed. And the curve on that, that's one thing about the AMT model I never liked, is the proportions are all wrong. So I love that this is correct, like to the Smithsonian model.
Yes, it is. Yeah.
And is that what they did, do you think, for the Polar Lights 350 TOS Enterprise that came out?
Yes, they did. But they became rather annoyed with me and a few other people because while they were actually creating the model, they kept insisting on putting in these rain gutters in it, or the grid lines, which were never there. And they basically argued with all of us and got mad at us and saying, "You don't know what you're talking about. We have it on the highest authority that those were actually there."
You guys are the highest authority, though.
Certainly Doug Drexler and Andy Probert and Mike, Kuda.
I've never heard of any of these people.
No, but they actually said that to more than one person, because we said, look, it's okay to have the penciled on, make a decal, because they did pencil grid lines on, but they weren't actually scored in. And I'm not sure, but I think Brian, when he did the redo for the Smithsonian, I'm not sure, but I think he might have slightly scribed them in. And if they had access to that model, then, as most people did, when they saw the Enterprise after it had been repainted and restored, the restoration was not correct. It was not canon and not accurate. Yet they would say, that's the way it is in the museum, so that's the way we're going to make the model. And that's where they made their mistake. So
grid lines are disputed quite a bit. I prefer them on my TOS model, but that's just me personally.
And on to the next photo. This one is very much, it's the Enterprise now. And it's funny to see how sleek that it feels amazing at this point. And this is so clearly what it's meant to be, and it's obviously not that far along compared to the previous one. So
there's some steps in the photographs that weren't shown, but what happened is after all that foam was sheeted on, then I filled it all with a type of spackle or modeling putty and sanded it to get really smooth, and then I put fiberglass cloth over it and epoxy resin. And I did a couple layers of that and then sanded that all down. So now you got this nice hard plastic epoxy shape. And then I took putty, 2-part putties, and put it on, and I was turning it the whole time so that it would keep it nice and even, and sanding and for about 3-4 days. And then what you're seeing here is I just got primer on it, and I'm checking to see how smooth it's coming out. And adding some of the other parts I've been working on to make sure that they all work. So,
and speaking of turning, if we go to the next picture, you can see that where you're scribing in the panel lines on the bottom of the secondary of the primary hull.
This was my highly technological, sophisticated way of doing it, but it actually worked very well because I built the whole model with that hole in the middle of it. I could always keep it centered, and I could always turn it, so everything would be symmetrical. And then I built this out of brass, and I put some rat tail files in it and walked them down, and so I could turn this whole thing. As you can see, it made very nice concentric lines.
Perfect. Cool. Genius idea.
And then on to the next photo.
I made up templates out of, today, if I was to do this, my friend Elliot Brown would, of course, make me brass templates and send them to me. But I didn't know Elliot in those days, and I didn't have access to photo etching process. So I used styrene and made templates, and then using a rat tail file, I would go in there and scribe out the windows so that they would actually be part of the mold.
All right, so moving on to the next picture. This is, of course, the skeletal frame for the secondary hull.
Yes, this is made out of model airplane ply and balsa wood, and this is classic as to how you would build a B-17 or a P-51 Mustang or a Spitfire, anything like that. So I used that because I knew I could get a very accurate shape, and I could work off. See, I would create my own plans off his plans to produce stuff that wasn't on his plans, like all these bulkheads. All I had was the profile shapes, and by measuring the thickness, because his plans are blown up to scale, the 3 views, I can measure every bit along the way what a certain bulkhead would be size-wise. And since they were all concentric circles and nothing was elongated, it made it very easy for me to produce this shape. And then, of course, I would sheet over it and produce the rest of the hull shape.
So the next photo, you're now putting the source onto the secondary hull, and it's really taking shape now.
Yeah, well, I couldn't wait to see. Once I got that far, I couldn't wait to see the engineering section, connected to it. It was a very exciting process because every step of the way, I was seeing a dream of mine come true.
Yeah.
What I'm doing here is I've started balsa sheeting, and you can recognize those indentations there where eventually the combs, as they're called, will go, and the nice stripe with the insignia on it. And you can see I'm starting to work on the pylons, and they're shaped out of balsa. Because, balsa is a really good material to work with. There are better materials, but, I have a hobby shop within walking distance of me when I lived here. And so I just go up there and grab what I needed. It was just a big model airplane. And so you can see some of the white putty it's been put in between. It's balsa fill to help me smooth over those abrupt changes in the sheeting.
Cool.
The next picture
Yeah, his deflector.
Yeah, well, deliberately the light's on it the way it is, so you can see how the contouring is really getting nice on it. And of course, once I fiberglass it, then I can put more putty on it and completely get rid of those seams. And of course, that's the base of the deflector starting out, which was a real pain in the butt to get. I thought I would go out and I would find a bunch of concentric rings and already existing materials that would actually be the correct sizes and spacing. Never happened. So those were all shaped by using ammonia water and balsa, because ammonia water will soften balsa wood so you can bend it around a form.
Oh, wow.
So I'd find a pipe or something or a piece of PVC or whatever I could find that was the right size, and I'd wrap it around that, put rubber bands around it, let it sit overnight, and then they would hold together really well. I just glue the two ends and blend them, and that's how I made that part.
So the next one is obviously a bit further along the process. It looks like you've fiberglassed and cut it up, but it's starting to see some lovely windows coming in there.
Yes, I've been describing the windows, and you're right. You're correct. It has been fiberglassed, and many of the details that the saucer section should have, the engineering section should have, are there now.
And the next picture is it finished in all its beautiful glory. I know we kind of skipped ahead, but we gotta get onto your current build soon. So, but yeah, there it is, a beauty shot of it, and I am in love with that ship.
It's a beauty. And, you know, the thing that really excels it is that there are a lot of irregularities in it because it was made by hand. This was not 3D printed, you know, and it was built the way pretty much they built things. And if you look at the real ship in the Smithsonian, it's very irregular. You know, the saucer edge is not perfect, and it's not from age. It was always like that. If you go back and look at some of the pictures they had of it when it was first made and on stage, I was in shock how, you know, especially in the underside of the saucer section was very, had a lot of flat spots and little points and things in it. I mean, you don't notice it when it's on film, and you really don't care either, because if you ever go down to a shipyard and look at some real ships, that's how they look.
Yeah, so, exactly. So the next picture is kind of a shot of it from the side, and you get to see the impulse engines lit up there, and I'm thoroughly impressed with this whole thing.
Well, I lit up the impulse engines. That's not canon. Everything else about the ship's real canon, but I lit those up because I just couldn't help myself.
Well, yeah, exactly. It looks so much better.
But all the windows that should be blacked out are blacked out. And I know a lot of people that built this kit, because I made a few kits and sold them to friends. They lit up all the lights, and even the ones in the pylons.
Pylons, yeah.
And I actually left out some stuff, like there's those little red and green lights go up on top of the nacelles, which will go on this one, and is certainly going on the Museum of Science Fiction one. But in addition, they've got a hangar bay and everything else too. So. And
the next picture is just a close-up of the finished saucer section again.
Right.
And now I got to ask real quick, those navigation lights, do the smaller ones light up as well, or are they just?
They are somewhat lit up, but the real one didn't. But you know, I'm reaching a point in my life where right now I'm doing the Stargazer, and you know, I'm looking at pictures of it from I watched the show, you know, where they find the Stargazer. Then there's another episode, I think Deep Space Nine, where it's a Lexington, and every one of them, it looks different. And from shot to shot, some things are lit up and some things aren't. So I kind of have decided from this point on, if I like the way something looks, I'm going to do it.
Yeah, so the next one is the Bassards. And I think the thing that really catches my attention is that little piece of, I guess, plating that's attaching the Bassard dome to the actual hull. I've never noticed those.
Well, actually, on the Smithsonian model, they're actually leather. I don't know if you guys knew that. Yeah, they're leather. It's a little leather strap that holds the Bassards on, but you can't tell that unless you get a close-up. Because I've seen a lot of close-up views now that it's going to restoration, and yeah, it's funny. It's leather. So I was going to ask if that's what yours is, but no. I guess
no, because I didn't know that, and you know, between Doug and Gary Kerr and Mike, no one told me that. I don't think they knew either. So no one had been that close to it.
Well, he's the captain for a reason.
Yeah, learn something new every day, and watching Trekyards, you always learn new stuff.
There you go.
So we might as well move on to the next one about the dome. Yeah. The dome above the Shuttlebay. Now, in mine, I colored. There's 3 different lights, correct? Yellow, orange, and red.
they're actually little pieces of plexiglass rod that were cut off at angles. Now, see, this is because I have Gary's plans, and so most people don't know what was really in there. And so I built this exactly the way they had built it for the Smithsonian one, the actual ship. And there's so plexiglass rods, and on the tips of them they had tinted them 3 different colors: yellow, orange, and red, I believe. And then there's this sort of eerie blue glow, and I forget what created that effect. It's been so long since I made it.
Yep, so this next one is the Deflector Close-Up, and that is a very detailed deflector.
Well, the way I made the deflector, I had never worked on a lathe before, and I finally got a really good lathe, a Fox lathe, and I was so excited about it. So I went out and I got some wood, and I said, I'm going to make a deflector. So I mapped everything off, the circumference of the circular shape and everything, and put it on a shaft, and I put it in there, and it took me 2 tries. The first one was pretty good, but I did a second one and then polished it up and made a mold on it, made it out of resin, and put copper paint on it.
And that's it, cruising off into the distance.
Yes.
Beautiful.
On another mission to go orbit another planet somewhere. And I love the purple glow we got on the back of the saucer from those bizarre collectors. So
Beautiful.
Oh,
excellent job on that model. But I think without further ado, we should get on to the current build you're working on.
So first of all, tell us, why are you building a second one? You think you mentioned it a little bit earlier, but give us more details.
Well, I was contacted by Greg Vigiano about the museum when they started, and they asked about having a large enterprise because they really liked the one I had, and they were, watched that build and everything. I said, sure, I'll build one, absolutely. The models actually belong to us, but they're kind of like on permanent loan. So I did take on some donations, and I still am. People have been contributing to this build so that they could get their name on a plaque. There's also going to be a computer interface, much like Star Trek, that they can tap and touch or access from their cell phone app that will show the faces of the people who donated above $100 or $100 and above, and will actually have little tiny figures of themselves strewn throughout the ship that they can see from various camera angles. They'll be mounted outside the ship that zoom in. You'll be able to access again from your app. So I was talking to Greg and I said, do you want me to make this model more than the original? Is it, you want absolutely canon to the original, or do you want it to have things that the original didn't have? Like Ken Palco had the idea, can you make clear windows in it? And could you be able to actually see any detail looking through those windows at the scale? And I said, gee, I don't know, Ken. So I tried it. Sure enough, you could. He's printing little figures. So it was his idea to do that. And then, of course, Elliot said, hey, you'd be able to look through the dome and see the bridge. They did that on the 1350. And I said, oh, okay. He said, well, I'll do the brass work for that. So it kind of went like that.
You have got a bridge, and yeah, there's more photos of it, but it's just so cool to see a real physical bridge. I mean, how much detail did you go into for the bridge module?
As much as I could go. Well, as much as is worth it, because really, once the dome's on it, people aren't going to be able to get so close. The camera will be able to zoom in there a bit. So, but there are all the chairs. They're going in there. The captain's chair, which I haven't made yet. There are no blinking lights in there. I wanted that, but I thought that's kind of taking it too far. So
let's move on to the next picture. It shows the view screen. Now I noticed you got the view screen centered, and that's the big debate whether the bridge is actually offset or not.
Right.
I chose to offset mine, but I know that Matt Jeffries initially really wanted it to be straight, which makes perfect sense. So can you tell us why you decided on doing it this way?
That's why.
That's why, because of Matt Jeffries. Okay.
If you look at some of his drawings and stuff, the view screen. He always wanted a forward-facing view screen.
Well,
now,
makes sense, right?
People got pretty annoyed when I started doing it and saying, "What does it matter which way it's facing? It's not a window. You can't tell." Well, up here, and if you do feel anything inside the ship, you're going to be feeling any kind of acceleration. Maybe your inertial dampers are off. And you're going to feel this, and you're looking at this right here. It's like, it doesn't feel right.
Everybody's going to throw up on the bridge.
Exactly. So, that was just a technical oversight that they made between the outside and the bridge. So, and it just, having the darn turbo lift open up behind the captain was really kind of, not right. So.
Yeah. I'm just going to quickly jump to the next photo. I know, Samuel, it's yours, but
Okay.
so there you see it centered, and I do like that a lot better. And the way they get around that, explaining where the turbo lift doors are in relation to that turbo lift shaft on the outside of the ship, is that there's actually, that's the storage for an auxiliary turbo lift shaft behind Uhura's station, that when the other one leaves, that one fills the spot, so there's always a turbo lift on the bridge. And then the next one is just another shot of the offset turbo lift there.
Which is really about how people will really see it. And they'll be able to see it from different angles. You'll get really close on it. So it really does read very well, I think.
Cool. Yeah, it's quite a bit of a distance, and you still get a real sense of it. The next one is an interior, a little man doing something. What is this?
That was a very temporary little cutout that I made, printed, because you can still see on the edge. There's material I could have removed, but it's just looking through one of the windows. So just trying to see what you could actually see using the iPhone.
And if we move to the next picture, there's another one of you where you can see kind of
they're overexposed. They're overexposed, but you know.
If you haven't seen it, go to Steve Neill's garage and watch the videos where it's on video. You can see it a lot better.
Yeah, you can.
And going to the next one with the shot farther away, you can definitely see it more clearly there.
So how many windows are you actually making interiors then?
They're all going to be have interiors in them, every single one of them. But some of them are not going to be lit very bright. Some of them are going to be almost off. So
now, are they accurate? Are they based on the blueprints, or are they just kind of whatever room you feel you should put in there?
Well, you know, a lot of people did different blueprints about what's behind those windows, and so none of them are accurate. So I'm just, you know.
And if we go to the next photo, the real sort of long shot, are you at least putting in some interiors famous rooms to make sure you at least cover all the bases? You know, having the briefing room, having sick bay. I mean, is that something you're going to try and include?
Yes, absolutely. So,
cool.
You bet. Well, you know, and that's the rec room there. That one. I'm not sure if that's where it's supposed to be or not, but it can be easily moved because the inside of the hull is curved, and you can move those little foam boxes I made with the detail on it anywhere in the ship. That's probably going to take more time to do than anything else.
I think the question, though, everyone is thinking is the bowling alley going to be on your model? Everyone's asking that, I think.
I don't know yet.
I don't think there's windows down that far, so it doesn't really matter.
Yeah, that's true.
All right, so there's another long shot of it next. And then, of course, we get to the Shuttlebay, which is very cool. I didn't include the Shuttlebay in my 350 scale because I just like the doors closed. But
if we cut to the next photo, it's an even more in focus detail shot. The actual interior. That is so incredibly detailed. Wow. How did you approach building a full on interior?
Well, it's all freehand. I mean, I basically just looked at some drawings, and I looked at the photographs too that they had of the set, and tried to extrapolate from all of that something that would fit in there. It didn't. You know, what they had with that set that they made for the model shuttle, which was only about that big, it really wouldn't fit inside there. I quickly figured that out when I was trying to get it to all fit. So I had to kind of like free form it. Yeah, it looks right. And I kind of tapered it off going back this way to give the illusion of more depth there. It's not finalized. The whole thing pulls out so I can get to it still. So
wow. That's basically the last photo, but I have two questions that are kind of on my mind. First of all, are you going to include a shuttle in there? And
yes.
Okay. And secondly, now that you've built this one with all these extra details, don't you want one for yourself with all the extra details? Or do you like yours the way it is? Because
I'm happy with mine the way it is.
Yeah.
You know, and really that is mine, and people are going to get to see it more than they would if it's sitting here. So people, you know, thousands of people once it's in the museum will see it and be able to enjoy it. So I would prefer that the new improved version is actually in the museum and not in my own possession. So.
Okay, thanks for joining us again today, Steve. We will see you very soon for another episode. But in the meantime, we would like to tell people to go to Steve Neill's garage, help him out, donate. You can donate and help him and create all these awesome pieces of science fiction history. Okay, thank you, Steve. As always, it's been a pleasure to have you here, and we look forward to many episodes with you down the road.
Thank you both. Thank you very much.
And by Steve's Neill Garage, you mean the website, not his physical garage. He doesn't want.
.com, yeah.
Doesn't want visitors. Yeah. And that is it for another mission briefing. A little bit less scripted, a little bit fun, and with a guest. Always nice. So, yeah, that's it for another week. And always subscribe to the channel. Always like us on Facebook, share the video, and do whatever you want, but make sure to keep watching. So, until next time, see you guys.
Bye.